Today's episode is brought to you by the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about garden history and literature. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is July 7th. Today in garden history, we remember Henry Compton, who served as the Bishop of London. He died on this day, July 7th, in 1713. Although Henry played an important role in English political and religious circles, his main passion was plants, especially scarce and exotic plants. In fact, it was said that Henry relished staying on the fringes of Charles II's court because it gave him more time to devote to his plants and gardens. And among his closest friends was one of the earliest English parson naturalists, John Ray, who published the first account of North American flora in his Historia Plantarum, which was published in 1688. Since Henry's role overseeing the church extended to the American colonies, Henry was able to get his hands on all of the new plant discoveries from the New World. Henry even personally sent a man named John Bannister to collect plants for him in Virginia. And among the plants that John sent to Henry was the Dodecathian media, the American cowslip, or the Eastern shooting star. Tragically, John died at 38 after falling from a cliff while exploring the area above the James River. Between his involvement with top plant explorers and nurseries of his day and the Tradescant family, Henry Compton was able to fully stock his garden at Fulham Palace. This Tudor country house served as a home to England's clergy for over a millennium. When he was alive, Henry's garden was reputed to have a greater variety of plants than any other garden in England. It featured over 1,000 exotics and tropicals, making it one of the most popular, envied, and essential gardens of Henry's lifetime. Even William Penn's Pennsylvania gardener was keen to swap seeds and plants with Henry Compton. And for his part, history records that Henry felt a little guilty about the amount of church money that he had invested in plants. And here's a little fun fact about Henry Compton. His kitchen garden always grew a crop of his favorite vegetable, kidney beans. Henry's collection of trees was particularly exciting. He was the first person in England to grow the Liriodendron tulipifera, or the tulip tree, the liquid amber, or the American sweet gum, which was used as a veneer or satin wood in furniture, the acacia, the mahogany tree, and the maple tree. And the garden designer Capability Brown found a special inspiration after touring Henry's home at Fulham Palace. And it was there that he first saw the cluster pin tree, the ash maple, the cork oak, the black Virginian walnut, and the honey locust. Henry also grew the first American azalea grown in England, the swamp azalea, or Rhododendron viscosum. Henry even managed to grow the first coffee tree in England with the help of his heated stove. In 1698, the governor of Virginia personally sent to Henry a Magnolia virginiana for his, quote, paradise at Fulham. 300 years after Henry planted the first Magnolia virginiana grown in Europe at St. Anne's Church, a new tree was planted on the exact same spot to honor the botanical work of Bishop Henry Compton. The Arnold Arboretum at Harvard propagated the magnolia sapling, and it was hand-delivered by Vi Lort Phillips, a member of the International Dendrology Society. The tree was planted on the 19th of May in 1992 and is already 40 years old this year. St. Anne's Church was special to Henry. He had consecrated the grounds in honor of Queen Anne because he had tutored both Princesses Anne and Mary when they were young. And today we celebrate the birthday of Miroslav Krleža, the Yugoslav and Croatian writer, poet, and cultural influencer. He was born on this day, July 7th, in 1893. Miroslav's nickname was Fritz, and he's often credited as the greatest Croatian writer of the 20th century. Miroslav believed that Serbs and Croatians were one people suffering from two national consciences, which inevitably pitted them against each other. Today, 3 hours west of his hometown of Zagreb, a celebrated statue of Miroslav stands in Opatija, above the city's famous Slatina beach. And almost every day during World War I, Miroslav wrote in his diary at the Croatian Botanical Garden in Zagreb. The relaxing gardens edge the city's railroad tracks before blending into the native grass and forest lands that feather the countryside. Although Miroslav found the garden suitable for writing, he dismissed its beauty and criticized it as a, quote, boring, second-rate cemetery. Miroslav served in the same regiment as the Yugoslavian communist dictator Tito during the war, but the two men didn't become lifelong friends until 1937. And for his part, Tito protected Miroslav from the pressures in his party. Tito once told him, "I know you're an old liberal and that you disagree with me on many things, but I wouldn't want to lose you." In 1938, Miroslav wrote On the Edge of Reason, an instant classic about human nature, hypocrisy, conformism, and stupidity. Miroslav once wrote, "There is no justice, even among flowers." And today we celebrate the birthday of Herbert Rappaport, the Austrian Soviet screenwriter and film director. He was born in Vienna on this day, July 7th, in 1908. Herbert first studied law before finding work in the movie business. In 1936, he was invited to help internationalize the Soviet cinema, and he spent the next 4 decades working as a filmmaker in Russia. Herbert once wrote, "I hope that while so many people are out smelling the flowers, someone is taking the time to plant some." And it was on this day, July 7th, in 1944, that Manny Steward, the American boxer, trainer, and commentator for HBO boxing, was born. Manny was known as the godfather of Detroit boxing, and he trained 41 world champion fighters during his long career, including Thomas Hearns, Lennox Lewis, and Vladimir Klitschko. Now, what most people don't know is that Manny loved to garden. He once wrote, "My favorite hobby is being alone. I like to be alone. I also like dancing, fishing, playing poker sometimes, and vegetable gardening, corn, tomatoes, cucumbers. I have a big garden every year." It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Gardener's Palette by Joe Thompson. This book came out in 2022, and the subtitle is Creating Color Harmony in the Garden. Well, Joe Thompson is one of Britain's leading garden designers, and this is her second book, which was written in conjunction with the Royal Horticulture Society. And the title of this book says it all. Palettes, masterfully proven, gorgeous color combinations for your garden. Now, I found that the most challenging job about palettes is not picking them, but sticking to them. And it's usually when we get into times of color droughts in our garden or hit an excellent plant sale that we break with our palette. And then the garden can slowly devolve into something a little wild and woolly. That said, if you feel that you're ready to make a change and take a more disciplined approach to what you plant in your flower garden, Well, then Joe's book will be a fantastic resource. Joe is a color master, a purveyor of color palettes. And in this book, she serves up 100 palette options. This is a book of eye candy for any gardener. And then Joe also identifies the plants that you should be scouting to make your palette a reality. And the photos in this book are also incredibly inspiring, and they beautifully illustrate why these colors work so well together in a garden setting. Now, I recently read a little article that was in Gardens Illustrated, and it shared Joe's top 5 favorite color combinations. And so I thought I would share that with you really quick in the review for Joe's book, because it's just perfect for giving you a little bit of a taste about what Joe means when she's talking about palettes. And plus, you get to hear a little bit of Joe's insights, the way that she thinks of color in the garden, and her unique and wonderfully engaging voice. So among her top 5 favorites is a palette called Tutti Frutti, which is bright magentas, and then Joe says fizzing oranges that delight as they catch the eye. Another palette that Joe loves is the Herbert palette, which offers mouth-watering sherbet colors that work softly together with each other. And they create a feel that at the same time both looks backward and forward, bringing with their soft tones both familiarity and excitement. Now, here's another palette that Joe is partial to, and I think this is a very exciting modern palette, and that is wine, peach, and coral. That combination, Joe says, works well together and creates a surprising harmony due to the surprising tones, because all 3 share those tones deep within their petals. And so those 3 work very well together, and the pictures of this particular palette are very inspiring. All right, now to the last 2. The last 2 are classics. The first one is pink. Pink is a garden classic, and Joe says this shade resonates in the memory because pink is soft and pretty, it's elegant, and it's a color that can stop us in our tracks. And an all-pink garden in bloom is truly something to behold. And then finally, Joe's other favorite is the green and white garden. Green and white, Joe says, is the freshness of morning light and the elegance of midday light and the serenity of the light in the evening. It's a gentle palette that is timeless in its appeal. Well, this gives you an idea of what Joe's book is all about. And as I said before, it is eye candy. It is also brain candy. It gets you thinking about your garden and the colors that are in your garden, what is working for you, what you like and what you don't like. And if you've never given the color or the cohesiveness of your garden much thought, well, then Joe's book is going to be just the ticket to get you to the next level in your garden in terms of design. This book is 388 pages of 100 different palette options for your garden, along with beautifully inspiring images, plant selections, and Joe's personal design preferences and tips. She's a pro. You can get a copy of The Gardener's Palette by Joe Thompson and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $40. Great book, hot off the press. All right, we end the show today with the birthday of Robert Heinlein, the American science fiction writer. He was born on this day, July 7th, in 1907. Robert is remembered for his classic book, Stranger in a Strange Land, which debuted in 1961. And in researching Robert, I discovered that he wrote many wonderful little sayings, like this humorous quote that I read to my husband: "Women and cats will do as they please, and men and dogs should relax and get used to the idea." But Robert also appreciated the power and beauty of nature. In his 1979 book, Time Enough for Love, Robert wrote, Money is a powerful aphrodisiac, but flowers work almost as well. And in his 1988 book, The Cat Who Walks Through Walls, Robert wrote, "Butterflies are not insects," Captain John Sterling said soberly. "They are self-propelled flowers." Well, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening to The Daily Gardener. And just remember that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. The next time you're over at Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. And if you'd like more of The Daily Gardener, you can subscribe to the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. And don't forget that you can also show your support for the show by using the Buy Me a Coffee link over at the website or in today's show notes. This is Jennifer Ebling. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.